Welcome back to the Raw Prospect Podcast. My name is Emmy Nixon. To my right, that is Michael Ween. And today we are continuing our series we call Random Questions. If you're new to this show, here's how it works. We, in a very similar way to how Zach Lowe, an NBA show we both listen to, does it, we're just going to we have chosen 7 questions uh, to discuss. Basically, I'm gonna say a question. Michael's gonna say a question. We're gonna go back and forth. We're just gonna go through discussing them on a variety of different topics around the NFL, and then a couple of college football questions at the end. So, if that sounds interesting to you, stick around. Make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to our channel as well. But before we get into it, got to introduce my co-host as always, Michael Ween. How you doing, man?
This time of year is always one of the most exciting times of year, specifically for myself. First of all, we're recording this on a Wednesday night, like we usually do. And 1 week from tonight, or I guess 1 week from today, I'll be celebrating my 25th birthday. And then the day after that is Thanksgiving. And that's obviously an exciting time because I'm sure you have plans and I have plans, and the next day is the A&M game. There's college football rivalry week. It's just a very fun time of year with all the sports that are on. But we're now entering officially the playoff chase, the 6-week playoff chase in the NFL. From Thanksgiving to the playoffs is a very critical time. Today, we're discussing topics from Emmy's Cowboys to my Pittsburgh Steelers to the Atlanta Falcons, who are in the midst of a very disappointing and rough season, to Sam Darnold and the Seahawks and what happened on Sunday against the Rams in a big game, to some very interesting college football coaching topics that are circling the internet and just the universe right now that hopefully I'll be able to clear up a couple things. But there's also some fun discussion to be had on where Lane Kiffin's going to end up and things of that nature. So, yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. There's really no more time to waste.
Yeah, a lot to get into tonight. But yeah, we are going to start with my Cowboys. So first question of the night is, how much stock do you put into the Cowboys' dominant win over the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday night? And I'll start off with this one. Watching that game, seeing the defense play the way they did, like, you can't help but feel positive for sure. There's 5 different starters than what the Cowboys had 2 weeks prior before the bye week, with Quinn Williams added to the lineup. The trades that was made for that linebacker from Cincinnati, can't remember his name right now. Getting DeMarvion Overshown back, a bunch of different guys added to the lineup, and it made a big difference. Now, it is just the Raiders, though. That is, that's definitely worth noting. But the pass rush definitely looked better. We've played bad offenses in prior weeks, and the defense still wasn't able to make its presence known, especially the pass rush. The pass rush has been pretty much non-existent throughout the entire season, and they played inspired, whether that be due to the passing of Marshawn Eland, which was super unfortunate. That came out, I think, middle of the bye week, and it was definitely a shocking story. There's a great story on it on the Athletic if you haven't heard about it. I won't get into it here, but there was definitely a different energy from this team. But in terms of how much stock, I'm a little bit hesitant just because there's still a long way to go. Not because the performance itself wasn't legit. I think the Cowboys played like a playoff team on Monday night. I think legitimately played like a playoff team. Now, whether or not they can continue that and play consistently and go on the run that they'll need to actually make the playoffs, that part I still question, because they're, at the end of the day, they're 4-5-1. They're not going to win this division. And when you look at the NFC playoff picture, they're most likely going to have to win either 9 or 10 games to get in. So there's not a whole lot of room for error.
This upcoming 3-game stretch that Dallas is about to encounter, starting this Sunday when they return home to face the Eagles, reminds me of a 3-game and 11-day stretch that the Steelers had last season, that the Steelers faced at the end of last season, where they played 3 games in 11 days against very tough opponents. But that was more towards the very end of the regular season, like Christmas time-ish is when that occurred. This happens to just be around Thanksgiving. But it's not really any different here. You get 3 games in 11 days, 2 of which are on Thursday. So it starts against the Eagles at home, which is a nice touch to it. At least you don't have to go on the road to play in Philly, especially at this time of year where the weather, as we saw on Sunday night, can play a big role. And then the Cowboys, after that, will play host to the Kansas City Chiefs on Thanksgiving. And then a week from that day, the next Thursday, they'll face the Detroit Lions in Detroit. So that's 3 games in 11 days against teams at 500 or above 500, depending on how you view the Chiefs and how they're playing right now. I mean, it could be varying levels of difficulty depending on how these teams are playing and how you view each team, but that's still not going to be easy. Not an easy stretch here in these next 3 weeks. But what you can take away from this Cowboys win is 2 things. Number one is the addition of Keenan Williams is as advertised. It's what you would have hoped for. It's as good as you would have hoped for in his debut. 1.5 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, a tackle for loss, and 4 tackles Monday night. And he did most of that damage in 2 quarters. His presence helped the Cowboys both from a pass rush standpoint and from a run game standpoint. The Raiders, even though I know they're bad offensively, they're a bad offensive football team. They held Las Vegas to 27 rushing yards. That's a pretty steep impact, immediate impact that Keenan Williams was able to make up front. So that's great because, some would argue that Dallas paid a steep cost for Keenan Williams, but you have to love that. And this could be a sign that this defense is turning a corner. I actually believe, even though the Raiders are a bad offensive football team, they entered week 11 averaging just 15.5 points per game, which is the second worst in the NFL. So there's only so much you can draw from a performance like that. But this was a Cowboys defense that, as you mentioned, was giving up plenty of points and plenty of yards to bad offensive football teams all season long. Before Monday night, all of their opponents, good, bad, or in the middle, had scored at least 20 points when they had played Dallas. And so a 33-16 win is pretty convincing. I think at one point it was 31-6, if I have that correctly. So this was even more dominant than maybe the final score indicated. But I think the difference here is this is a Dallas defense that is finally getting all its pieces back, as you mentioned. Overshown at linebacker along with Logan Wilson is, at the very least, upgrades on the margins, right, from what they had playing previously. You get the debut of Siobhan Revell Jr., another young talent that they drafted, who I was really high on in the draft process. You plug him in this defense. You get some key pieces back, and it certainly helped. And I think there was also an emotional aspect to this, obviously, with the Marshawn Leland situation. So if Dallas can use that performance along with the situation with Marshawn Leland and all these pieces coming together healthy to rally this defense to be an average defense, as we said, I think 1 or 2 weeks ago, this Dallas team can make a run for the playoffs. How much stock do I put into it in terms of actually making the playoffs? Not that much yet. I need to see this for 2 or 3 more weeks, or at least for another week before I buy too much into it. But it's definitely a good place to start.
Yeah, if they beat the Eagles this weekend, and they get to 6-5-1, then we can talk. But as of right now, nothing yet. Okay, now let's move on to your Steelers. So this is a pretty interesting question. I'm interested to hear what you have to say on it. The question is, who are the top 5 young players, 25 and under, on the Pittsburgh Steelers right now?
So I'll try to make this as quick as I can. The reason I came up with this question, though, before I answer it, is what you see at the very bottom of your screen. There's a narrative out there, and it's true. Steelers have a lot of veterans, aging veterans, right, all across the roster. The average age of this football team is about 28 years old. They're the second oldest team in the league behind the Washington Commanders, okay? So there's a narrative out there amongst some media, some fans that are not Steelers fans, that they really don't have much young talent on this roster at key positions. In some ways, they're right because the only position that really matters is quarterback, and they don't have a future at quarterback, at least determined right now. But there are a lot of young players that me as a Steelers fan, I'm really excited about. And so I don't have the specific ages of these players memorized. I didn't write them down, but they're all 25 and younger. Okay. And that's that was the criteria for this question. I'm going to go top to bottom just because it's easier to explain that way. The best player on this team that's under 25 right now is Nick Herbig. He's a little bit of an undersized pass rusher. He's kind of their third pass rusher in situations that Alex Highsmith is healthy. But it is my opinion as a Steelers fan, and it's a widespread opinion across Steelers Nation, that the Steelers should heavily consider trading Alex Highsmith to acquire assets back so that they can pay Nick Herbig, who has really emerged and taken another step as a young player this season. He's 23 years old, and he hasn't struggled as much to be available to the team as Alex Highsmith has in the past couple seasons. Alex Highsmith missed this last week's game with a pec injury, so he's been in and out of the lineup. Luckily, they have Nick Herbig. Nick Herbig, where was the stat I was just looking at? There are only 7 players with more quick pressures, meaning pressures that happen in 2.5 seconds or less, than Nick Herbig this season, who has 16 such pressures. The only players with more than that are Nick Bonito, Micah Parsons, Will Anderson, Abdul Carter, Josh Hines Allen, Myles Garrett, and Jonathan Grenard. So he's been like the best. To put it frankly, Nick Herbig's been the best Steelers pass rusher on the entire team this season. It hasn't really been close. He leads them in pressures. He leads them in sacks. He leads them in quarterback hits. I'm really high on Nick Herbig. I think the Steelers are going to end up paying him a lot of money, and therefore I think they should look into moving Alex Highsmith somewhere else in the offseason, because I wouldn't want Nick Herbig to be anywhere else other than on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when you consider that TJ Watt is on the wrong side of 30, that's pretty self-explanatory. At number 2, I think the Steelers have a foundational piece on the offensive line in Zach Frazier. Very good rookie year, continues to be great, especially in the run game this year. Doesn't give up a whole lot of pressures or sacks. Um, he's if there are problems on this Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line, it has nothing to do with Zach Frazier. I don't have a lot of stats to give you there, but he, in my opinion, is just one of the best football players on this team, period, regardless of age. So I have him at number 2. Because of the recent emergence at number 3, Darnell Washington. The Steelers
Mm-hmm.
continue to use him more, and I absolutely love it. He is he is something else to watch. 6'7", 300 plus pounds. They haven't used him as much in the red zone as I would like, but they're using him across the middle as kind of like a safety outlet. He's kind of become their most used tight end this year. When they play him 40 or more offensive snaps in his NFL career to this point, it's happened 9 times. The Steelers haven't lost in any of those 9 instances. I don't know if those two things are directly correlated, but it seems to me that the more he plays, the better this offense gets. And he's so versatile because of what he can do as a blocker in the run game. Number 4, I have Joey Porter Jr. The main knock on Joey Porter Jr. is he plays very undisciplined and he gets called for a lot of penalties, but he also doesn't give up a lot of touchdowns. I think he's given up 1 touchdown in man-to-man coverage over the last 2 years. It's a very low number. He played really well this week against the Cincinnati Bengals after getting torched a month prior against this same team. I'm still really high on JPJ. I think he's more of a number 2 corner than a number 1 corner. I think that's pretty clear. But I'd rather have him on this football team than not moving forward. So I don't know what that contract situation looks like, but he would be my number 4. And then number 5, I argued between 2 rookies. But since I already have an offensive lineman on this list, I opted for Derek Harmon. I'm just very excited about the potential of this guy, both as a pass rusher and in the run game. He's got 3 sacks on the season. He's been fairly disruptive in all the games that I've watched, fairly impactful in all the games that I've watched. So he would be like number 5 on my list. Small sample size so far. We'll see where it goes. Troy Faltano also deserves a shout out for how well he's played this year. But I wanted to have this conversation just to kind of lay out there is some young talent on this roster. They just need more of it at key positions. They have it at pass rusher or at edge rusher. They have it on the interior defensive line. Keanu Benton's another guy who's played really well so far this season. They even have it at linebacker with Peyton Wilson, who has his moments. They have it on defense to a certain extent. They have a young core on this offensive line. They just needed that quarterback, and they need some more young playmakers. But other than that, like despite them being the second oldest team in the league, there are young players that I'm excited about on this Steelers team.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think for me, the shout out to Troy Fatanu was the one I was waiting on. I expected him to be on the list, to be honest, but after after hearing the 5 guys, I think that leaving him off for now is probably, I mean, that's fair. So I don't really have a whole lot to add on it. Did you want to say anything before we move on from your Steelers?
No, I'm kind of in the same situation you are. Not in like the Steelers have a tough stretch coming up. They have to play Chicago on the road this week, and then they come back home for Buffalo next week, and the week after is their first game with Baltimore. So we're kind of in another 3-game stretch that is going to go a long way in determining how real this Steelers team is. They're in a pretty good position. They're still a full game up in their division, and they still have 2 opportunities to go against Baltimore. Um, I'm still kind of in the camp that it's going to come down to that last game of the season. Just kind of what it feels like as of right now. That game in Pittsburgh, Steelers at Ravens for the division. I think only one team from this division is making the playoffs. I think that's pretty clear as of right now. Especially with Houston's resurgence, and Jacksonville playing good football, the Chargers up there, and the Chiefs still in contention. Like there are a lot of teams fighting for those wild card spots. So I don't know. We'll see. Rodgers is a little banged up. I'm pretty confident in Mason Rudolph as kind of a spot starter. I think he can get us out of a stadium for 1 or 2 weeks. I don't think much actually changes with this Steelers offense with him in the game as opposed to Rodgers. So yeah, I'm still kind of in wait and see mode for how seriously I'm taking this Steelers team.
Yeah. Yeah, totally fair. I think you'll be just fine with Rudolph. I think as long as you can protect
Yeah.
going against Chicago. Chicago's defensive line isn't the greatest, so I think that's a pretty good matchup from that standpoint. But yeah, that's that. With that, we'll move on to our third question of the night. Um, this is a conversation that if you have happened to turn on the ESPN channel at any point in the last 36 hours, you've probably seen this ad nauseum. But we're going to give our take on it. So, how concerned should Chiefs fans be about missing the playoffs entirely? A, not concerned. B, moderately concerned. Or C, fire alarms, fire panic, like full on, like just like robbing banks.
What? Okay. Let's each give our initial answer and then we can get into this discussion. My answer is they should be moderately concerned, but
Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
nothing close to panic yet.
Yeah.
So what's kind of your take on it?
Well, my take on it is they just have a small margin for error, and we've known that for a while. We saw that last year over and over and over again. I think they were like 11-0 in one score games last year, and this year they're 0-6. Or wait, no, 0-5. So that's the funny thing about the NFL is like, instead of regressing to the mean, you can regress to the absolute polar opposite.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yep.
and that's really what's happening. I don't think they're just like horrible in close games or like have any problems closing games. It's just that they're, like I said, their margin for error is really small. They can't run the ball, and it seems like their receivers. Um, it feels like they've gone too far to the other side of the equation, and what I mean by that is like they've acquired a bunch of these deep threats to get the deep passing game going again. They brought in Thornton and obviously they have Worthy and Brown trying to get that deep passing game going, get that explosive passing attack back. But it feels like they don't have enough possession first down getters. And obviously Rashee Rice is that, but he's kind of the only one because at this point, Juju Smith-Schuster is just not reliable. Um, Travis Kelce, of course, is, but he can only do so much at his age. Like he was very productive in that Denver Broncos game. I give him credit, but it felt like when things got a little tight, late on in the game, the Denver really, turned off that faucet completely. So it's definitely worth being concerned, not panicked. But the defense is good, not great, and the offense is just okay, and that's just kind of where they're at.
They should be moderately concerned for sure. They sit at 5-5. And my main thing, if you just look at this from a scenario standpoint, with each loss from here on out, their margin of error is going to get smaller and smaller. Now, according to the FPI, they still have a 56% chance to make the playoffs. Make of that what you will. Take it with a grain of salt if you want or not. Probably depends on what your confirmation bias says about the Chiefs. It either says you like the Chiefs because you're a Chiefs fan, or you hate the Chiefs because you're tired of them. Those are the extremes that we live in today's world of sports. I'm kind of somewhere in between, but anyway, their conference record is not helping them right now. They're 2-4 against the AFC. The team that has the same record as them, that they are trying to leapfrog, because right now they're ninth out on the outside looking in. Only 7 get in the current standings. The team they're competing with on the outside looking in is the Houston Texans. The Texans have a 4-2 record against the AFC. The Chiefs have a 2-4 record against the AFC. And the thing that's not helping the Chiefs right now is you look at the teams currently in the playoffs and you look at the teams that they've played. They played the Bills. The Bills won the head-to-head. They played the Chargers. The Chargers won the head-to-head. They played the Broncos. The Broncos won the head-to-head. So, these head-to-head tiebreakers as of right now, even though we have 7 games left, and the fact that they have not fared well against the AFC is not helping them right now. And that's what makes for the small margin of error. But here's why you're not totally panicked if you're a Chiefs fan. You look at their schedule. Coming out of this bye week, they're going to play the Colts at home. That's a team that, even though it got a win the last time they played, the offense hasn't clicked quite as easily as it did maybe the first 8 games of the season. So hopefully you're at home and you can win that game. You're going to need to. They still have another shot at the Chargers, which they'll get at home, and they still have another shot at the Broncos, which they'll get at home. So their toughest games from here on out are all at Arrowhead. And what do we know about Arrowhead this time of year? It's cold, it's loud, and it's really hard to win there. No matter the state of the Chiefs and how they're playing at that particular time.
And they still play Houston, I think.
And they still play Houston, and that's at home. That's the team that I was forgetting. So, you can take care of the Houston thing by beating them, right? And then you don't have a shot. I don't think the Chiefs are winning their division. That's too far out of sight right now. 7 games left. Broncos are 4 games up, plus they have the head-to-head. That's not happening. And even if they still have to surpass the Chargers to even think about the Broncos. So it's I don't think that's happening.
No.
But you still have games that you should definitely win on this schedule. And all the tough ones, all the important ones are at home. And so, am I moderately concerned about the Chiefs missing the playoffs? Yes, because they still have a pretty tough schedule. It's the 12th hardest remaining schedule in the league. And they're not necessarily playing great football on either side of the ball right now. But they still control their own destiny. If they're able to go on a run here and beat Indianapolis, Houston, the Chargers, and the Broncos, or win 3 out of those 4 games, they're pretty likely to leapfrog somebody and get in the playoffs. But another team I forgot, they play Jacksonville. That's a loss that's not helping them right now in the playoff race, since they're in the wild card race, which is where the Chiefs are going to be. So I'm moderately concerned, but not 5-alarm fire panicked.
Yeah. The only real win they have against the AFC opponent is Baltimore, and we'll see where they're at. But they might not even be. Depending on how they do against Pittsburgh. We'll see about that, but they might not even be wild card either, so it might not even end up helping them. But we'll see on that. I think for Kansas City, the concern level should be at like a 6 out of 10 ish.
Yeah, because we were saying a couple of weeks ago that we only thought the Chiefs were going to lose like 2 more games max, and I think they've already lost those 2 games the past
Yeah,
couple of weeks. And so now it's like, whoa, we're going to have to rethink things a little bit. Um, does 10-7 get Kansas City in? Most likely, yes. Um, I don't know. Like Baltimore got back to 500 this past week. They didn't look great in that Cleveland game. I don't know if the Baltimore is necessarily the team that you need to specifically worry about here if you're Kansas City. Just because I think if Baltimore gets in, they're not taking the Chiefs spot, they're taking the Steelers spot. That's kind of how I view that because I only think one AFC North team is getting in. I think if you're the Chiefs, you're going to have to try to beat out teams like the Jaguars, the Texans, um, whoever else is in that. You're going to have to take one of these team spots. You're just going to have to take care of business, win some of these divisional games, take care of Houston, and go from there.
yeah, definitely. Okay, moving on from the Chiefs, we have a interesting conversation here about the Falcons that we need to have. So what needs to change in Atlanta is the first thing. And should the changes involve GM and head coach? I think I'll go ahead and start with this one. Here's the thing, like I don't really know why they're bad. Like they're bad, but I don't even know why they're bad because you look at this roster and like okay, like they have Bijan Robinson, who's probably depending on who you ask, a top 2 running back in football this year. You have Drake London, who's playing like a top 10, maybe even top 5 wide receiver. He might be hurt, but we'll see on that. They have good weapons: Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, who they don't really get involved enough for some reason. So this offense definitely doesn't click as much as it should, given that they have a decent offensive line. They should have an elite run game, given that they have 2 good running backs, but they don't for some reason. And then also, they not only do they not have a good run, not only do they not have an elite run game like they should, they also don't utilize play action enough, which is just the most like easy thing ever. I don't really understand that thought process from Zach Robinson. So I think if you're gonna let go of anybody, I think you start with the offensive coordinator. I don't feel great about calling for anyone's job, but I don't think he's done that great of a job there in Atlanta. And I don't know if he's the guy you want calling the plays to help develop Michael Penix Jr. because it doesn't feel like he's getting the most out of this offense. Now, from the GM standpoint, um, it's easy to be critical given that they made this win now move. They went out and they traded their first round pick for this year, which is going to be a top 10 selection. But I honestly, I mean, I don't hate it. I didn't hate the move at the time, and I still don't hate the thought process. It hasn't worked out this year, but if you think about it from the perspective of like, okay, if you just add James Pierce Jr. to next year's draft class, then it might actually be okay. Like I think like they did get 2 good players out of it. So um it hasn't worked out this year. I'm still like I'm questioning Raheem Morris quite a bit, but I think as of right now, from an outsider's perspective, I would probably give him one more year. But I understand why Falcons fans would probably want to just get rid of him.
I have a couple big time questions that need to be answered in Atlanta. Um, the first is, the first thing I want to say is congratulations to the 8-2 Los Angeles Rams, who currently would hold the 8th pick in this upcoming draft, because they have the Falcons pick. So they might be in the Super Bowl, and they still might get a top 10 pick. Congratulations to them. The Falcons got aggressive on opening night. They get Jalen Walker at 15. I don't have a problem with that at all. And they circle back to get James Pierce. I have no problem with being aggressive, especially when you're Atlanta and you have all these young pieces, especially on offense, and you have a winnable division, and you're trying to get to the playoffs. You're trying to do something you haven't done. You're trying to win. I get it. I don't begrudge them at all for making those moves. The problem is we're now in, I start at the top. We're now 5 years into the Terry Fontenot era as general manager of Atlanta. And he's made good moves. Like, there is talent on this roster. There's no denying that. But I'm starting to ask questions. Why? He's 32-46 and as Atlanta's general manager. He's got 0 winning seasons. And in that time period, the Falcons have had 6 different starting quarterbacks in the last 5 years. And now you have a guy in Raheem Morris, who he hired after they fired, who was the last coach there? Was it
Arthur Smith.
Arthur Smith? You've now already made a head coaching change. Okay. So you kind of got your get out of jail free card there. You've made a bunch of quarterback moves. None of them have really worked out. Although I will say, I'm not yet ready to give up on Penix. Not even close. But I'm going to get to him in a second. You're 14 games under 500. You haven't found a quarterback. You haven't had a winning season. I just have a lot of questions for how this has gone under this general manager. I don't question a lot of his moves, but at some point there's got to be a return on investment.
Right.
Which, for whatever reason, the Falcons aren't receiving. Now, is that all his fault? Probably not. But you can't go 5 years with no results. So I think it starts at the top. He needs to be evaluated in some way, shape, or form, whether he gets fired or not, or it needs to be a philosophical change to his approach, or this needs to change, or this needs to change. I don't know if he needs to be fired. I don't know what needs to happen, but they need to look into him. And the reason I don't talk of Raheem Morris is because I think one of two things are going to happen. I think they're going to stick with this regime one more year, or the GM's going to be fired. And because of that, unfortunately, Raheem Morris is probably going to be gone too. Yeah. I think either both of them are gone or none of them are gone. And they're just going to try to add more, fill some holes in this roster, and, do it again next year and see if it works. It's like one final, hurrah. But I don't know necessarily how they're going to do that, considering they don't have their first round pick. But who's not to say they couldn't, hit on their second, third, and fourth round draft picks? I don't know. Penix is the real interesting conversation here, because no matter who your GM is and no matter who your coach is, in all likelihood, if you don't have the quarterback situation solidified, you're not doing shit anyways. So I'm not ready to give up on him 12 starts into his NFL career. But here's the reality of the situation. He's now going to be having his third ACL surgery in his career. Okay. The list of injuries, I don't need to I had it somewhere. I don't want to like rattle it off. 2018 at Indiana, he had a right torn ACL. 2019 at Indiana, he had a fractured collarbone. 2020, he tore his right ACL again. 2021 at Washington, he had a left AC joint separation in his shoulder. And then this year, he's got a partially torn ACL again that he's going to have surgery on.
In his right knee?
I don't know which knee it is,
Okay.
but yeah, he hurt his knee on Sunday and he's out for another 9 months. So like, I'm not ready to give up on him, but now you're in a situation where he's going on his third major leg surgery, and he's had injury issues throughout he's been injury prone throughout his career as a quarterback. And you have this money invested in your backup in Kirk Cousins, yet Michael Penix might not be ready for next year. Even if he is, he's coming off a major surgery, and you're now looking for another quarterback. I don't know. I'm just laying the situation out there. I think there are questions at GM that need to be asked because we're 5 years into his tenure and there's no real results to point to. Which at the bottom line, like, if you want to quibble with why this happened or why that happened, knock yourself out. The NFL is a results-oriented business. These organizations are trying to win. And when you go 5 seasons without winning much of anything, questions start to get asked. So I don't know. I think you start at the top and then work your way down. Because I think they need to decide, first and foremost, who is the right guy to help us build towards the future. If they believe that's Terry Fontenot, great. If not, you got to move on. You start at the top and then work your way down.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'll finish with this. Will be my last point. I'll finish with this. I think the thing you can, when you're evaluating him, the thing you can knock him for the most is his misevaluation of where the roster was actually at. He made the win now move when you could argue that they weren't ready for the win now move. Because you look at what the defense was last year, and you look at, the fact that Michael Penix Jr., while he did show good moments in the time as a starter in his rookie year, still like needs time to grow, obviously. For them to just put put a chip as valuable as their first round pick in the middle, I think that part you can question for sure. But with that, we'll move on to a conversation I don't look forward to having at all. But yet again, we are here. Um, will Sam Darnold ultimately sink the Seahawks in the playoffs? Darnold's performance versus the LA Rams has brought back concerns, to say the least. I'll have you start on this one, and then we'll go back and forth here.
I feel icky having this conversation because he's having an MVP caliber season. But here's what I'll say. I think there are certain matchups that could really give Darnold himself and the Seahawks a lot of trouble come playoff time. And one of them happened on Sunday. I think Sam Darnold, now that we have a big enough sample size, for whatever reason, has a Chris Shula problem. Because last year in the playoffs, he faced Chris Shula. That didn't go well. And in 3 games now against Shula's defense, dating back to last season when Darnold was in Minnesota, he's 0-3. He's been sacked 12 times. He's thrown 5 picks, 4 of those which were on Sunday. And against all other defensive coordinators since the start of last season, he's 21-4. But it just so happens he's 0-3 against that one defensive coordinator. And in that 24, inside of that 21-4 record, he's actually been one of the league's most productive quarterbacks via True Media. If you look at like EPA per play, completion percentage, yards per target, success rate, he's been MVP caliber. But Shula's defense is definitely doing things to affect Darnold in his play in these games. The one takeaway I had, and I guess I've always had this because it's kind of the way that he plays, it's in his DNA, I think, as a football player, going back to his days in college. He's a guy who's going to instinctively hunt, whether good or bad, for big time throws, big time plays down the field, because those are the plays that he knows with his talent and that we know with his talent he can make. It's in his nature to want to extend plays, to want to hold on to the ball a little longer, to not want to necessarily take the check down all the time, even if it might be the right play to make or the right throw to make. He wants to push the ball downfield, and he wants to, create explosives. Some might call it hero ball. I don't necessarily call it that. I think he's just using his God-given talent to try to make things happen. It's in his DNA. It's how he's going to play. And executives around the league, if you read The Athletic, think that's just going to be, I don't know if you can necessarily coach that out of him. Now it doesn't hurt him all the time, right? Against a lot of defenses and a lot of games this year, and a lot of games throughout the rest of his career, we all know that can win you a lot of games at the NFL level with his talent and his ability to make plays off script and his size and his athleticism and his arm strength. That can win you a lot of games. But when the deep shots aren't there, and when defenses have certain things schemed up schematically to keep the lid on top of this offense and keep them from throwing downfield, Darnold tends to hold on to the ball a little bit more. He tends to take a lot of sacks, like he did in last year's loss to the Rams in the playoffs. But a lot of that was also his offensive line, which was just not good. I wanted to say another word, but wasn't good. And then, if he's not going to be taking those checkdowns, he tends to make, he'll try to force it into coverage, and then you get the bunch of picks that ensued on Sunday. And so, look, heading into Sunday, they had the most explosive passing game for a reason in the league. But in week 11, they produced one completion over 20 air yards. And even that play required a remarkable one-handed catch on the sideline by Jackson Smith-Njigba. And so the Rams just, their pass rush and their coverage units worked in concert to hurry Darnold into tight window throws. And he was looking for big plays downfield. That's in his nature. And the Rams did a really good job of not allowing that to happen. So I think against a defense, a certain matchup that can really create pressure and bait him into some tight window throws down the field is where they could really be in trouble come playoff time. Specifically, now that the data size is big enough against Chris Shula's defense, because he's now done it 3 times. And none of them have really gone according to plan for Darnold. So we'll see what happens there. But look, I think the positive, if you're a Seahawks fan, is he threw 4 picks. and you still had a field goal to win the game at the end.
Yeah. Honestly, man, I take the more pessimistic look at it, I guess. Like yes, he has the like he wants to like hunt for those big throws down the field, definitely. But Sunday, I don't really think that's what I saw. Like I saw him just like kind of melt, for lack of a better word. Like he just looked like he was panicking, and that's what was most concerning to me. Like it was just like stunning to watch, just like him just break down. Um, and like the weird thing is, you look outside of those plays where he threw those picks, and like there was some good stuff in there. Like they were moving the ball. That's the crazy thing. Like if he throws two interceptions, they probably win that game. Even and probably if he throws three interceptions, they probably win that game. But it's just so hard to beat a Super Bowl level team throwing four picks. And to answer the question, from my perspective, will he sink the Seahawks season? Probably. Um, I I have nothing against Sam Darnold, but I just struggle to believe in him to come through in the big moment, in the big playoff game, especially putting him up against his counterparts in the NFC. Like if you ask me who do I trust more between Baker Mayfield or Jalen Hurts or Stafford or even Prescott, who do I think, like who do I trust more to perform better in the playoff game? I would probably take those guys above Darnold. And the saving grace for Seattle is their defense is real. Like there's like even with me saying that he probably will sink their season, there I acknowledge that there is like a 25% chance that this defense is so good that they could still win a Super Bowl, which is actually like insane to think about. Like this could be like a, you know, 2015 Broncos, like Legion of Boom, 2000 Ravens level defense that we're watching right now.
Yeah, it's a good defense. I don't know if it's 2000 Ravens. I mean, that's a
I mean,
little
that's
too much
yeah,
for
that's a
me.
little much. But I honestly do think they're insanely good. Like I the way they performed in that Rams game was like just I was really impressed, man. Like, and they've been doing that all year to teams.
They're insanely good. I agree with you. But if they're 2000 Ravens level good, they will carry this team to win the Super Bowl. And I
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a chance that that's who they are.
well, if they're at
I'm not even saying they are that. I'm just saying there's a chance.
if they're that, then great. Um, I I mean, yeah, we're just gonna have to see Sam Darnold not crumble in the playoffs.
Yeah,
How do you do that if you're Seattle? You're probably gonna have to number one, lean on your run game a little more. Um, I think you have the pieces in place. I think you have the talent at quarterback in place. Um, what I do know for sure is against this specific defense and whatever Chris Shula is doing against Sam Darnold, if that matchup happens again down the road, I'm not, based on what I've seen, not confident that he'll be able to overcome it. Um, I also think a lot of this depends on like where where does Seattle find themselves playing in the playoffs? Are they playing in Seattle or are they playing on the road? And because they lost that game Sunday, right now they're probably going on the road, especially if the Rams win this division. Who do I trust more? Um, between I think your point though on like who do you trust more, Darnold or these other quarterbacks that are going to be in the NFC playoffs, you're right there. Like, would I take Sam Darnold over Matthew Stafford in an important moment? No. Would I take him over Jalen Hurts in an important moment? No. Would I take him over? Would you take him over Jared Goff in an important moment?
I don't. Uh,
No.
that one's closer, but I don't think I would. No.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't like to put. I guess my hesitation in answering the question is I don't like to put like the onus of a team's season sinking on one player, but
Yeah.
that's the nature of the quarterback position in the NFL. So we'll see what happens.
And I think it's just also the nature of that team too. Like that team is ready to at least compete for a Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that was an interesting conversation at the very least. Now we'll shift over to college football to close out the show. We have a couple questions about a couple of coaches in college football that have been swirling within the rumor mill. First one being Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Um, First question: what is your prediction about Lane Kiffin's coaching future?
Okay, I'm answering this question on what I've read and what I know about the situation, but I want to hear you. I want to hear your just raw prediction first. What do you think Lane's doing? There are really three things that he could do. I'll lay them out for you. Okay, he stays at Ole Miss, he goes to Florida, or he goes to LSU. Those are the real options that really have legs at this point. So if I give you those three things based on your gut or your whatever your heart tells you, what do you think Lane is going to do?
My gut tells me that Ole Miss is going to pony up and he's going to stay. Like possibly resetting the coaching market in terms of salary. That's my gut feeling. Now, my second choice would definitely be Florida. At this point in time, based on I mean, I watched Josh Pate's podcast quite a bit, and based on what I've heard from that show in particular, I'd be pretty shocked if he ended up in Baton Rouge. But that is a big time program. I'm not going to rule it out. But given their current state, I would question that move quite a bit.
Interesting. Here's what I know. I know that the Kiffin family, not including Lane himself, but his brother, who's involved in the Ole Miss football program, his son, who is a top 2028 high school quarterback recruit, Knox Kiffin, and some of his family members, his wife, his other kids, his daughter, made 2 trips this past weekend. You know what the 2 trips were? They were to Gainesville first on Sunday, and then they were to Baton Rouge second on Monday. Those same group of people, his daughter, his son, his brother, his wife, and maybe a couple others, they made those trips to both Gainesville and Baton Rouge. Those are the 2 jobs that, if Lane leaves, are at the forefront of the sweepstakes for Mr. Lane Kiffin. Now, I don't necessarily deny your theory that, or your prediction that Lane Kiffin is going to stay at Ole Miss. Everything that he said to this point, although not going to say in the middle of a playoff run that he's leaving, either way, but everything that all his actions on social media and on the Pat McAfee show earlier this week and in the media in general indicate that he is all in on being in that football program with all the resources that they've given him, the program he's built up to be a playoff caliber program again, a program that, quite frankly, could compete for a national championship in the right year. I'm not even like arguing with that side of things. I think he could definitely stay at Ole Miss. I'm just making this prediction based on what I've seen and read today from media members who are plugged into the coaching searches and from people who are plugged into both the programs that he could go to, Florida or LSU. Now, what I can tell people is, one, Florida's doing everything possible to get Lane Kiffin. They're turning over every stone possible to get Lane Kiffin. That is their number one target, and it's not even close. And I don't blame them. And we know that Florida, or Lane in particular, had interest in the Florida job previously back in 2021 when it opened. Now, they didn't hire Lane, obviously, but he had interest in that job for good reason. Now, I think there are questions that Lane is going to have about the state of both programs, okay, and where things stand there, both at LSU and at Florida. But just based on what I'm reading coming out of those two visits, I actually lean, as of today, if Lane leaves Ole Miss, I think, as of right now, he would go to LSU. That's my prediction. I could be flat out wrong on that. But that's just my gut feeling based on everything that I've read. And what I'll tell people is, before we move on, don't get caught up in the semantics of Lane Kiffin denying that Ole Miss gave him an ultimatum on a timeline for a decision. Because I trust, and people in the industry trust the Pete Nakos of the world, the Chris Lowe's of the world, the Brett McMurphys of the world, the reporting done by those three excellent guys. Ole Miss wants a decision made by next week, by the time the Egg Bowl rolls around. The week of the Egg Bowl, very well plugged in people to Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, and this whole coaching carousel know that whether Lane wants to admit it or not, or Ole Miss wants to admit it or not, there's a very fine timeline on when Ole Miss wants a decision by. With the playoff coming up and potentially the SEC championship game coming up, Ole Miss wants a decision quickly because if Lane's going to leave, they need to know who they're going to hire to replace him. And they don't want to lose out on the John Summerall sweepstakes, the coach at Tulane, who might go to Auburn. So it's just kind of like a weird thing right now. But based on it's a very close call. Based on everything that I've read, I predict he will go to LSU. I would not count out LSU just yet.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I guess with all that, we can go ahead and move on. That's a interesting place to leave that question. But yeah, we for our last question of the night, we are on the Texas Longhorns, and we if you have not, if you did not know already, we have a podcast called Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. So if this question interests you, you'll probably like that show where we do a lot of stuff like this and some in terms of Texas Longhorn related things. But the question is there fire, in quotes, with the Sark to the NFL smoke. So is there merit to that rumor, essentially?
What do you think? Do you think there's fire here, or do you think it's all smoke?
Nah, I don't think he's going anywhere. Um, I think in terms of if I were to put it on a scale from 1 to 10 on how much of a possibility I think he could leave this year, I would put it at like a 2, if that. Um, I I don't know if there's much there, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it because I know there's a reason why you would ask this question.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there are reasons I asked the question because if you remember about a month ago, I think it was after the Kentucky game where Sark was asked. Yeah, it was after the Kentucky Monday after the Kentucky game, where Sark was asked uh, about his role calling plays, and he basically shut those. He nipped that in the bud real fast. He said, "No, I'm the." He basically said, "No, I haven't considered it. I haven't considered giving up play calling because I was hired here in part because I view myself, and Texas views me as an elite offensive play caller. So there have been no considerations to me giving up play calling." A couple days later, before the Mississippi State game happened, Diana Rossini, who's a very well-respected NFL reporter for The Athletic and formerly of ESPN, reported that Sark would have interest in going to the possibly moving on to the NFL and would have a specific interest in the Tennessee Titans job, which then his agency a couple hours later, right before the Mississippi State game kicked off, put out a statement that said this is completely false. Like, this is not true. Okay. Now, this week, after the Georgia game, fast forward a couple weeks, things start to resurface again. I don't know if you saw it, Emmy, but early Monday morning, Desmond Howard, you know who Desmond Howard is. He's on college game day, Heisman winner
Yeah.
with the Michigan Wolverines, very high profile personality within the college football media sphere. He puts a short video clip out on his, I think it was IG story, where funny enough, he's taking his trash out. Okay, he's in his front yard, he's taking his trash out. And I don't know if you saw the clip, but if you didn't, it basically goes like this. "Good morning, guys. Dez here. I'm taking my trash out." There are a couple tennis balls. He then pans to a couple tennis balls in his front yard, which is a weird reference, but people then have decoded that to mean like tennis balls, Tennessee Titans, Nashville, Tennessee, tennis balls. You kind of get the vibe there. I don't know what Desmond Howard knows, but he pans to some tennis balls in his front yard because he's taking the trash out and he sees the tennis balls. And then he just randomly says, "Keep an eye on the Texas job. That might open up. There might be a mutual parting of ways between Texas and Sark." And then he just ends the video. And so then things really got weird on Monday because Texas fans are still sour about how this season has gone. They're really like they're you're playing with fire with Texas fans right now, okay? And their emotions and all this kind of stuff. They're already not happy with Sark. So now these rumors start to surface. You have a high-profile name like Desmond Howard, who, by the way, and this is where it got really interesting on Monday, when I looked up Desmond Howard's agent. He's at the same agency as Sark. They know each other. They're pretty good friends. So would Desmond Howard be saying something like that if he didn't get the permission or he didn't know something to say something like that on social media? But today, Sark basically said again, I'm not going anywhere, period. He shut it down again. So I say all that to kind of just set the scene for the reason we're asking this question, because he shut it down after the Kentucky game when Diana Rossini put that report out. Desmond Howard did it again. It keeps coming up. He shut it down again. I think eventually, 2-3 years down the road, it's definitely a possibility. Right now, there are sources high up in the Texas football program that say 100% Sark will be the head coach at Texas through 2026. And I believe them. I believe Sark at his word today when he said, I'm not going anywhere. He's done it 2 or 3 times now. And I think once he does it 2 or 3 times, you got to believe him.
Yeah, I'm kind of there too. I didn't hear about any of the Desmond Howard stuff.
I
Earlier
will
this week.
I will send you the clip just because number one, it's funny, like the situation of it all, like just out of nowhere, Desmond Howard gets on social
So
media and he's like wearing a bucket hat and he's taking his trash out and he just decides to get on social media and say that after this kind of thing had already been shut down a couple weeks prior. I don't know. It's a lot of things going on behind the scenes at Texas right now. But if we start talking about that, we'll be on here for another 2 hours. So
yeah,
we'll end it right there.
yeah, we will. Yeah, that's gonna do it, guys. Um, Appreciate y'all watching. This was a good episode. I really enjoyed this one. We'll probably keep doing this segment like this moving forward. But yeah, that'll do it. Appreciate you watching. And until next time, peace out.